Hey everyone, today we're taking a look at Battlefield 6 on the Onexfly APEX, which is the most powerful 8-inch handheld you can get right now. And that's because of the AMD AI Max Plus 395. We're going to test this at a number of different TDP levels and a few different settings to see how we can achieve at least 60 FPS. So the first thing that we're going to try here is at 80 watts. We're going to use overkill settings, and we have our FSR set to quality, and we have frame generation turned on. And with these settings, we're pretty overkill. Like, we're sitting at 120 FPS or more, which is going to max out the display here. So as long as you're okay with the level of, I guess, very slight latency you'll get with the frame generation, you can play at these settings and honestly just have the best looking and smoothest experience. If you don't like using frame generation and don't want any of that input delay, you could always just turn that off. And you're still going to get over 60 FPS with these settings. Like, we're somewhere in the mid 60s most of the time. So I would recommend going with this if you're playing competitively. If you're playing, let's say, something like the campaign like I am here, frame generation should be perfectly fine as well. And lastly, for 80 watts, if you don't like FSR, don't like frame generation, you can turn both off, but what the results are going to be is at these settings, we're not going to be able to reach 60 FPS, so you probably have to turn down the graphics settings or lower the resolution. But I wanted to show you how it runs without any upscaling. Now we're going to switch things up, and instead of being at 80 watts, we're going to drop down to 55 watts on battery. This is 1200p overkill settings with frame gen off and FSR set to quality. With those settings, unfortunately, we were not able to hit 60 FPS. We were just a little bit under. So how we're going to try to address that is we're going to set our FSR to balanced. And we'll see if that makes enough of a difference, because we were fairly close. And with balance settings, we seem to be just over 60, like it's very close, but I think we should be fine. If you're in a super busy area, you may need to adjust it a little bit lower, but right now it seems to look fairly good. And next up for our battery test, we're going to go down to 45 watt and keep the same settings. And unfortunately here, we're also not hitting 60 FPS with these new settings, which is FSR set to balanced, overkill settings, 1200p with frame gen off. So what we're going to do to adjust the settings here and hopefully push us above 60 is we're going to change FSR to performance and see what difference it makes. And once again, that seems to have just pushed us over the edge here, where we're over 60 FPS. We're sitting around the mid 60s, so this should be fairly stable to play at. Now we're going to drop down to 30 watts, and we're probably going to need to adjust the settings right away because I don't think we're going to be able to play at the same settings. So what we have here is we have our FSR set to performance. We're going to try ultra performance just to see how it does. I feel like we're probably going to have to change things a little bit further. Yeah, and we're at the low 50s, so this is not going to do. We need to change things a little bit further. So what we could do here is we could either change the resolution or we could turn down the graphics settings. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually just turn down the graphics just a little bit. So we're going to turn it from overkill and we're going to go down to high and just see how it does with those settings. Now that we're at high settings, we're going to also turn our FSR down a little bit. We're going to put it to balanced instead of ultra performance. And this seems to be very close to 60, but it still does go under on the rare occasion. I think it's stable enough that actually, you know what? It has dropped down again to the mid 50s. So we're going to take this and we're going to drop the graphics down to medium and see if that makes a difference. Now that we're at medium settings, we seem to be back into the mid 60s, sometimes low 60s. So I think this might be enough, possibly. If you want a little bit more stability, you could always drop it just a touch more, but it looks like we're mostly above 60 FPS now. Now for the last test here, we're going to drop down to 20 watts. I'm not going to bother with 15. This APU really struggles at 15 watts, so we're going to just cap it at going down to 20. So for this, I had to drop the settings quite a bit to get this to run over 60 FPS. And what it looks like right now is I'm running at 800p, so I've dropped the resolution. I've also dropped the settings down to low. And I have our upscaling here to ultra performance. So we're really lowering the settings here. But with doing that, we are able to get above 60 FPS. Sometimes it still dips below, but it's very close. So I would say that if you're trying to conserve power, this is probably the best you're going to get for this game, and still have a fairly playable experience. So that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you want to see some other game tests, check out other videos on this channel. I'm going to be doing a few other game tests before I send the device on. As well, if you want to learn more about the Apex itself, check out my main channel, Okayest Gamer, where I've covered it in a few videos as well as a few collaborations. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and thank you for watching.